Have you heard of 1000 Words of Summer? I hadn't until I decided to read 1000 Words by Jami Attenberg. While browsing my bookshelf, I stumbled on the book, saw its subtitle, and thought, I want to be creative, focused, and productive all year round. While I wouldn't say the book made that happen, I did have a great experience reading it and was left feeling motivated and creative for some time afterwards. But before I go into all that, what is 1000 Words of Summer? Back in 2018, Attenberg came up with the idea to write 1,000 words for 14 days as a kind of boot camp, posted she was doing it on her social media, and it blew up, even warranting a hashtag. Since then, it's become an annual event with many authors and writers also participating. As someone who finds NaNoWriMo too intimidating, I quickly fell in love with the idea, as this seems much more doable. So I decided, after I finish reading the book, I'll try challenging myself to write 1,000 words for 14 days, but more on that later. First, let's talk about 1,000 Words, the book, and what I learned reading it. This is a book full of writing advice. It's a mix of motivation to start writing, acknowledgments that life happens, reassurance you are a writer, and assurance that writing can be hard. It even includes simple advice on giving and receiving critiques. Attenberg also shares letters from other writers throughout, and I found it interesting how they all spend a lot of time saying the same things in slightly different ways in order to make the reader really understand. Take the main advice throughout the book. Just write and worry about things next draft. Just finish that draft and you can fix it. Just do what you can and be compassionate toward yourself. Seriously, just write. Do it. Other advice repeated throughout include participate in community outreach and be part of a community. Lots of anti tech, anti distraction. Social media is depleting your creative soul rhetoric. Advice is just advice. You don't have to listen to it. You need to find time to write. Be consistent about it. Just because you wrote something doesn't mean you need to share it. And finally, done is better than perfect. It's all simple advice, but sometimes you need to hear it in just the right way. For example, for years I've heard in passing, you should steal like an artist, but it wasn't until reading Andrew Sean Greer's letter that it finally clicked. It's not about stealing content, it's about learning technique. Or in Greer's words, it means take your favorite scene from a novel and put it in yours, if only to learn how it functions. Don't plagiarize. Don't steal the content. Steal the technique. Another letter that stood out was Ruman Alam's, which reframed writing as a privilege. No one is ever going to ask you to write a book. Writing isn't something anyone wants from you, but a thing you demand of yourself. It's not, I have to write a novel. It's, I get to write a novel. Sarah Novick's letter is one I found myself thinking back on the most weeks later. She talks about how not all advice is good advice, or good advice for you, and how the rules of writing have nothing to do with writing itself, and that she no longer applied them when writing her next novel. I was left reassured that even if I write a generic story, I can improve with the next one, that whatever I end up writing won't be all my writing ever is. I suppose that's the point of this book, to reassure you it's okay to just write, to let yourself go and know you'll be okay. In the section, When Someone Tells You No, Attenberg shares her experience being told by a writing teacher that she shouldn't become a writer. She was just 21 years old, and he was considered to be an authority on literature, and yet she describes that moment as freeing. This line especially stuck with me. He said no, but I said yes. Ultimately, a lot of the advice in this book I've heard elsewhere. It was how certain advice was phrased that stuck with me. I found myself feeling excited to write, feeling creative and motivated in a way I haven't felt in a long time. I haven't written much. Huge gaps of time have passed between the short moments I do write. So for me, this book was worth reading. A big reason for that were the letters I mentioned earlier. These letters are written by other authors in order to give advice and talk about their experiences. They were written to motivate writers reading them, not letters sharing their experiences doing the 1,000 word challenge like I'd assumed. Though occasionally a letter does mention 1,000 words. Some letters spoke to me more than others, and I could gush about them all, but I'll spare you and only mention a few highlights. But for those of you uninterested, use the timestamps below to skip. For those who are interested, I'm going to read excerpts from 7 letters, just a line or two, and the name of the author and the page number will be on the screen. Expiration dates aren't real. They're made of whispers and insecurities and Instagram ads and someone else's idea of what is possible for you, but they are not made of you. I am gently suggesting that you identify the ways you might be avoiding the deeply unglamorous task of tolerating yourself long enough to push something out. It's difficult for me to make peace in advance with the inevitable detours, backtracks, wrong turns, dead ends, and flat tires. I need to put down the wrong thing in order to be able to let it go. It's not binary. Writing doesn't have to be perfect on the first try, or it's garbage. The only thing we can control is writing. Every book is different, and often tips and tricks that work with one book don't work with the next one. The one thing that works every single time is just writing. One of the most difficult things about writing is overcoming all the excuses we give ourselves not to write. I'm able to be productive because I don't think of writing as something that happens in my head. It's a physical act. It's making something that didn't exist before. I never thought of it this way before. I've always viewed writing as something that happens in my head. Perhaps that's why it mostly stayed there for me. Something to think about. And finally, we're building a body of work, a career not defined by one book, one essay, one paragraph, one sentence. When I decided to write 1,000 words for 14 days, I expected to fail. I couldn't imagine myself being able to do it. Not writing is so easy after all, but I wanted to try. To prepare myself mentally, I posted on the subreddit r/writers asking for advice. Thank you, Redditors who responded. Everyone was kind. I also searched for other YouTube videos on the challenge, but only found Curious Cat's video. Check that out if you want to watch someone vlog their experience doing the challenge. I was anxious, made worse by the realization I wanted to write longhand in a journal instead of using my laptop. I knew knowing the word count wouldn't be as easy, but I figured I'd manually count the first day and use that as my baseline going forward. I also decided to track my progress in my brand new writing journal and share updates on my Blue Sky account. I hyped myself up, and gradually the day I decided to start came. I was going to start writing 1,000 words after not having written anything for over a year. I sat down at my desk, opened my journal, set my timer for 25 minutes, and started writing. After two 25-minute sessions and 4 pages, I wrote over 1,000 words. I completely ignored all the advice I'd sought out. I did not get up and pace. I did not snack or drink fluids. I did not burn out, I think. I just sat down and wrote, moving only my hands. And what shocked me was how easy it was. The thing is, writing isn't hard. Writing 1,000 words isn't hard either. It's writing well. Writing 1,000 good words that's hard. Considering I just wanted to write again, writing 1,000 not great words was perfect. During those 14 days, I felt so creative, gained a clear idea of my story, got stuck, backtracked, developed new ideas, became weirdly obsessed with man-eating trees, and even experienced the best writing session of my life on day 10. I'm still afraid to reread what I wrote because I felt so emotional writing that scene. I never felt so connected to my characters before. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. I wasn't always consistent with when I wrote. Some days it felt like I was cutting it pretty close. Due to my poor sleep schedule, many days I found myself nodding off as I wrote. I began obsessively hand counting my words. It started day 11, the day after my best writing session. I noticed my handwriting had gotten smaller. When I counted, I found it now only took 3 pages to reach 1,000 words. Suddenly I wasn't writing because I wanted to write. I was writing to reach 1,000 words. I'd pause, count, write 5 to 10 minutes more, then count again until I counted a little over 1,000 words on the off chance I miscounted somewhere. It was like the thought of writing more than 1,000 words was too much. I had to write the bare minimum. Any more was not okay. It was exhausting, and I hated it, but I couldn't stop. Once I finished day 14, I was excited I did it, but more relieved the counting was over. And so I decided I would never write towards a word count again, at least not when writing by hand. Let the computer do that for me when I eventually type up my story. Actually, I'll avoid word count based goals until I learn not to get fixated on them. Overall, this challenge was a good experience, tainted near the end by my fixation on only hitting my word count. Wouldn't want to write more than 1,000 words after all. Still, this challenge got me writing again, and for the first time, I actually enjoyed it. I wouldn't mind doing it again someday, just not longhand or anytime soon. Would I recommend you read 1,000 words? That depends. While I enjoyed a lot of the advice given, a lot of it didn't land for me too. That said, the book did motivate me, stimulate my creativity, and challenge me to do something I thought I couldn't. Write 1,000 words a day. Now I know I can, easily, as long as the words don't have to be good. Again, a lot of the advice you've probably already heard. Still, if you're like me, wanting to write again, held back by yourself, needing or wanting reassurance, maybe check out the sample on Amazon or see if you can find it at your local library or bookstore. At the end of the day, I like to remember no one asked me to write a book, and a book is just a collection of words. Before I go, I want to take a moment to read two letters in full, because of course I do. First, Morgan Parker's letter, which made me laugh. This will be my first 1,000 words of summer, and I am effing terrified. I am going to fail. Whatever my goals are, I will not reach them. I will not create award winning literature. I will break many of my own intentions and lose at least 2 days bullying myself and at least one day coddling myself. And I definitely won't finish my book. Like, let's be real, Morgan. It's 2 weeks. So I'm going to forgive myself up front for failing to meet my own absurd expectations and congratulate myself ahead of time for returning each day to the desk, willfully and intentionally, gratefully and purposefully, because that is how it happens. And something will happen. Before counting anything, I would like to congratulate myself for all the days when 20 feels like Everest, when I hate 1,000 out of 1,000 of my words. I'm forgiving myself in advance for all the absolute crap I will write before getting my groove, for taking too many TV breaks, for not getting to the desk before 5 p.m. I will get my head out of my ass and my mind out of my head and eat meals and drink water. I will be too dedicated to doubt myself and too imaginative to judge myself. I will not delete sentences before finishing them. When the phone or the dog whines for my attention, I will finish my thought first. If the computer woos me with its wiki research wormholes or sneers at me with its sassy cursor, I will switch to a notebook. If I find myself doodling, I'll move to a typewriter. I will show my tools some love, justify my indulgences, be in love with the physical stuff of craft, limited edition pencils, pocket fountain pens, German typewriters with fresh ribbons, gifted notebooks, special pencil sharpener, red pens, and green staples. I will de-intellectualize and re-centralize my writing practice. Pay attention to how my body feels. The whisper of a scrawling hand sliding over paper. The bell at the end of the line. Turning a new page. I will turn a new page. When I find myself writing a grocery list, I will make a snack. When my wrists hurt, I'll take a walk. When Netflix asks if I'm still watching, I will leave the house altogether. When I don't remember what I'm doing or why, I'll read June Jordan poems, Baldwin's Art of Fiction interview, and if necessary, 8th grade journals or the high school essay that concludes, I will write. Back then, I said it was the only thing I knew for certain. Today is a new moon. Maybe that's why I'm writing intentions. I am trying to be an affirmation for myself. This morning I set an alarm for 4:30 a.m. with the label, "The moon is new." When it woke me, I rose up in bed and wondered if I should go outside and look. And finally, Lauren Groff's letter, because I really liked her description on writing every day. What I would like for you to remember today is that your work is a living thing. It exists outside of you. It has hungers and fears and joys and lusts of its own. In some ways, this can be a great comfort because your job is merely the job of all the caretakers of wild beasts. You have to keep the work fed, give it shelter and a place to exercise, allow it to nap and roar and squeal and lunge and hide in the shade on a hot day. On the other hand, Taking care of anything and keeping it alive is a responsibility that is not for the languid, or the half hearted, or the uncommitted. You have to wake up every day ready to trot off and feed the beast. What makes this all the more complicated is that you will never quite know the mood of your work until you visit it. Sometimes you get lucky and your work stalks you like a tiger, and all you have to do is stand there and let it leap on you. Most of the time, though, the work is shy. It is more of a mouse or a lemur than a tiger. It can often seem like a drunken mistake on the part of the creator, something like a platypus or axolotl or blobfish. When your work appears to you as small and furtive, you will have to show up day after day in silence and patience and hope and try your best. And a lot of the time, it will only reveal a twitching nose or a fin before fleeing from your hands. You'll be left with a bunch of words that you know you'll destroy the next day, or you will be left, perhaps, with a negative word count. This isn't the time to give up hope. It's the time to slow down, to pay more attention, to spend more time, to sit with your work in stillness, putting aside your impatience and frustration, because the work can smell it, just as it can smell your fear and rage. If you were a small, shy creature, you wouldn't want to come out and play with the big person full of spiky negative emotions either. If you can do this, if you can attend to your beasts with patience and faith, you will encounter the beautiful truth, which is that the mere fact of showing up will one day be enough. Your gentleness will coax that brilliant piece out. Perhaps it won't come out on your preferred timeline, but it will definitely come out on its own, because every work of art has its own lifespan, its own needs, its own heartbeat. Only if you take patient care of it over time will the work reveal these intimate things to you. I really enjoyed sharing what I learned. Thank you for watching. Next video will be on how I came up with my current story idea. I hope to see you then.